Well, did you get to experience the famed Corsair waggle?
Yeah, the waggle.
The waggle in the tail?
It
does, doesn't it?
It has the waggle, yeah.
Everyone does.
Yeah, as soon as you get into a bank, it just kind of
just kind
waggles
of
along.
fishtails itself through.
Yeah. Well, we've seen that accentuated to the point where it's like, holy crap, it doesn't want to bank very well, and you have some control compromise. But we didn't have that with this.
Yeah.
No. The wiggle was there, the waggle was there, but it wasn't.
Well, on a dead straight run, you'll see it too on a Corsair. You just see that little bit of.
When you're just hammering through it, you see a little bit of tail wiggle.
And it was like that on a full scale one.
But visually, it was there. Control wise,
yeah,
it wasn't. Which is
solid.
good.
Yeah,
which is good.
Well, hey, let's jump into the review
stuff.
Let's do it then.
I jump ahead, so
it's all right. It's okay. You're allowed to. Model characteristics, build as advertised, 4 out of 5. We had mentioned earlier that both of us had our hands in this. It went together fine. Everything you would expect from, like Kurt said earlier, from a traditional ARF standpoint. There were some areas of more frustration than others. I guess the best way to put it.
That's a good way to put it, because you want to make it look good.
Yes.
You know, and you hate to say, well, when you're just throwing an ARF together, you don't really, because that's not the case. I mean, I think most people try to make things fit well, and when they find out there's something that it's inherent in the build that stops things from aligning, they do their best to kind of true it up. But if it's within boundaries, they're like, okay, it looks good.
Well, when you're in a solid color plane, that's easier.
Right.
When you're trying to match any kind of camouflage,
you've got two-tone paint on this. You've got a lot of alignment points, and it's a Gold Edition ARF.
And
so
it never fails. Wherever it wants to fit is where it doesn't line up.
Line up, exactly.
It. And it isn't this isn't any kind of kit or hit to the
the finished product at all.
No, it's one of those things that requires you to take your time. And when Plan A doesn't work, you have to go to Plan B, and you got to make it work.
And specifically, there's a plastic cover which allows you to access your linkage, because it's hidden linkage, which is nice. For your elevator, for your rudder, and also for your tail wheel. And this plastic cover down here actually gives you that access to it, and then allows you to seal it up to make it look good. Had a lot of alignment issues on that black cover. Had to really mess with that a lot, more than we thought. Tried to trim a little bit, and it's a painted finished piece, so it isn't like it's raw and you can just trim it to cut.
No,
you're not messing with finished paint. So that was a little bit of a point of frustration. They include actually silver screws in the kit. We chose to go with black ones, so it would blend in a little bit better. So something like that's a small detail. Throw in black screws; it would look better in the finished product. It won't draw your eyes to those bright screws sticking out. We fought with the intercooler intakes.
Yes,
the cooling intakes in the wings.
That surprised me. That was a frustrating part, because you look at them and you think, oh, it's just a matter of.
But you've got all those seam points where it has to flow.
You've got to do a lot of cutting on that.
A lot of
fitting.
trimming. Yes. Dry fitting and trimming.
Because you'll think it looks good until you get the fuse on, and then you'll find out that your angle wasn't correct on the front, and you've got to. Because it won't tuck into the fuse. It's got to end right at the fuse.
Yeah, there's too many compound angles going on to where you really have to fight that like crazy to get it in. Once you get them in, then they're a structural weak point. If you pick up the plane at all from those, you'll pop them right loose.
Yeah, there's a lot of hollowness underneath that, so you got to keep your hands away from them, really.
Yep, that was a little bit of frustration.
And then, of course, the cowl. Cowls are always problematic on most planes. This one in particular. The thing that you're going to find out with this kit, and Kurt and I fought it a little bit just because our brains were telling us something, what we're used to seeing. If you view this plane from the side, you're going to swear that this engine has got up thrust way off the chart. Yeah. It looks like that engine's pointing, sitting way up instead of either level or down.
It looks like it has a good 2-3 degree up thrust on it, which you never want on a plane.
But according to the thrust line of this plane, this engine's sitting right in line. Well,
there is no down thrust, and that's the specific thing. If you're expecting down thrust, there is none. On the Corsair, it's straight on.
It's straight, but it still throws you off, because without this cowl on, it looks just like that engine is sitting up in the air. And then what happens is that also translates to the cowl, and you'll see it on the cowl. I don't care if there's no up thrust or not. The way this cowl wants to line up, you're going to be pushing that thrust bearing is going to be basically right to the top of the cutout in the front of the cowl. Yeah, and that's what comes out to the detail that's in the mock engine on the inside. Exactly. You try to line everything up in the center. If you try to get that cowl to line the center hole up with the thrust bearing on the engine itself, or the prop washer, it's not going to happen. Your cowl's going to be sticking straight up in the air. You got it. You really have to cut into that. Yep. That mock. You've got to cut it either big, or you've got to cut it oval to allow that to sit where it needs to sit. Yep. And then, of course, you've got everything else that's coming into play. You've got the blocks that were put on, that you have to put on for your cowl screws to go in. Well, you have to line up with those.
Yep.
But at the same time, you're trying to get that front lined up. Now, you also got to take into consideration, you've got an engine that's sticking out of here. You've got an exhaust that's coming out.
Yep.
You've got a fill line for your fuel.
Yeah, and that's
You've got-
optional. That was
optional,
yeah.
But there's a lot going on with it. And it all works. You just got to have the patience. And that's where being... having some skill in building helps.
Yeah.
Because you're allowed to get past those problems and modify things the way you need to, where someone who's never done that before is not going to think far enough ahead.
Yep.
They're going to think this should just pop together.
Last note on the build as advertised, where it definitely took a hit for us, was on the Retract, or the landing gear brackets, the receivers. If you don't, if we went with the Retracts, which I would assume most people are going to go with the Retracts. So, of course, we went with the Retracts in our optional build. When you go to put the Robart pneumatics in place, of course, those are machined, and they're true as can be. Both of the tabs are nice and true. All the mechanics want a nice level mounting of the actual Retract bracket itself. The wood frame that was inside of it was twisted, and it was offset. Yeah, they were crooked, and then they were also spun. So when you crank down the screws on your Retracts, it puts so much side force and twisting torque on the Retract bracket that they were seizing up. They were locking up. And that's the last thing you want, is your Retracts to not function properly, locked in the up position or whatever. So I had to shim and grind and shave and tuck and grind and shim. I spent 2 hours plus easy on just the Retracts, getting those brackets to line up properly inside the housing they created. So that really was the only thing that hit me on the kit. Like, man, this caused me so much work to have to true up.
Yeah, and you can't have your landing gear coming out at different angles and stuff to one another.
The major location was okay. It would have been all right visually, but it was so twisted, and twisted and torqued that it was just putting a ton of strain on that bracket. They weren't true at all. Yeah. So that was a problem. That was definitely a problem with it. But other than that, then...
Sounds like a lot, but it's
you say, well, other than that, all the regular stuff, putting in all the servos and doing all that stuff was fine. It wasn't a problem at all.
Decals went on easy.
Yeah, decals went on.
Hey, problem with that. No, that leads us to finish. 4.5 out of 5 on the finish. It is a very nice looking airplane when it's done.
Yep.
The flat monocoat is appropriate for the plane.
Yep.
I didn't see any spots on the monocoat that were horribly wrinkled to where we couldn't iron. Quick hit with the iron took care of them.
No, it laid down nicely. Everything was on there well. That wasn't an issue. It's just inherent to the flat monocoat. It shows absolutely everything.
It's like a stainless steel appliance.
Yeah, take your fingernail and just barely bump the covering and just start to put a dent in the wood, and you're going to see that from 3 feet away, 4 feet away.
It's very susceptible to hanger rash.
Yeah. But it's very well done. The coating is beautiful, and the paint as well.
Looks sharp.
Yeah.
Power 5 out of 5. Now that was using your...
That was with the OSFS 95V 4-stroke and using the 14x7 3-blade prop from Master Air Screw. Great combination. It's a lot of fun flying. Typically on a 3-blade, you kind of feel that, not a whole lot of tremendous speed improvement at the 60+% throttle to 100%, but we did notice significantly more thrust delivered, so it kept the performance right where it needed to be. You can do gorgeous scale flights and then also fly like an RC plane with the FS95V and the 14x7 3-blade, so it was great, very comfortable.
All right, ground handling 5 out of 5.
The big concern about Corsairs is people always have a hard time landing them.
Yeah.
And I think where most of the trouble occurs is on their final turn. It's when they're making their final turn coming in for their landing, setting up their landing. They either chop off the speed too much and they get into a stall condition. And with a polyhedral wing like this, you've got a lot of dynamics taking place on the wing itself. You're not going to have conventional stall behavior. So you always err to the safe side and bring it a little bit hotter. You've got nice scale, like standoff scale. Yeah. You've got really effective flaps.
Yep.
You can stop it on a dime. You can bring that speed off, but do so when you're already flat level and you're lined up and you're coming into your final. Not on your downwind turn. And I think that's where most of the problems occur. The other thing is this is a tricycle landing gear, and like most tricycle landing gear planes. Or tail dragger.
Tail dragger. I was going to say, where's the nose wheel?
Where's the nose wheel?
That's all right.
With most tail draggers, you're always safe to bring it in and touch down the mains.
Yep.
And then set the tail down.
Exactly.
Don't force yourself into a nice three-point stall. You don't want to bring it in and just go pop on the ground. err to the safe side. Bring it in, land it on the mains, and then set the tail down.
Yep.
And doing that with the flaps, keeping a little bit of power on, and then let it run out. Everybody wants to stop. It seems like people shoot for that magic 20-foot window of, I touch down and I'm stopped inside of 20 feet. Go ahead, that's what your field's for. Bring it in, touch down the mains, touch down the tail, and let it run itself out a little bit. A little bit of run out at landing, and it behaved extremely well. We didn't have any of the nose over tendencies at all. If you are taking this off for the first time, and you're not used to, your crosswind takeoffs, you're not real comfortable. Keep in mind with the shape of the main wing, you're going to catch a lot of crosswind. You've already got the wing tip sticking up in the air, so you're going to feel a lot more imposing force of the crosswind and it's going to affect the aircraft a lot more drastically than some other flat wing aircraft or no dihedral. And you're going to want to correct with your rudder. So as soon as you bring it off, then you're accentuating that roll. You're accentuating that that torque roll, depending on which way you're taking off. But you're also going to throw a wingtip up towards the oncoming air. It can be a handle in crosswind takeoffs. Don't do it. Just get used to the aircraft first. Take off when you got a good headwind or when it's a calm day. Don't go out there when you got a heavy crosswind on the runway and you're I just got to fly, I got to check it off. You're really setting yourself up for failure. So, and we experienced that time and again when we were first taking it off with a heavy crosswind. It can be a real handful. So, it's more about piloting choices, which is what 90+% of the crashes happen from pilot error, but. It's about making those good decisions. It's going to be more susceptible to crosswind, but it behaved otherwise. It was really, really good.
All right, that brings us to durability. This is a build-up balsa plane with a covering on it, and it doesn't matter what kind of mishap you're going to have, off the field, on the field, you're going to do damage to it. It's just that simple. We gave it a 3.5 out of 5 for durability, and it's just because of how it's made.
Yeah, and if you look at the size of the fuselage at the firewall and the firewall itself, if you have a power-on prop strike on takeoff, say you start to go up and you either tilt up or you do a forward flop and you hit with the power on, you're going to rip that engine right loose to the firewall,
it'll pull
or the
itself
firewall
right
is going to get pulled off.
So, and with that, the cowl's going to go.
Yep, you're going to
pieces are going to fly back into the wing.
Yeah, it's not going to be pretty. You get a lot of torque, good size engine, and if it hits, you don't have, and you saw it in the inside, you don't have significant heavy duty bracing because they have the challenge of the weight of the aircraft and being within the performance requirements in terms of durability. Not having wing failure and things like that. You can't build this thing like a tank.
No,
it's got to be built fairly light, and this Corsair is built relatively light on the main fuselage. Wings are tough as heck, but the main fuse is built pretty light.
All right, pilot experience. Flight is advertised. We've already spoken a lot about the flight.
We have. It behaves well. The
4 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5. Sorry.
The waggle is there, but it's fun and it makes you realize you're flying a Corsair. And otherwise, other than having smaller, less room for error on takeoffs, less room for error on landings, its behavior in the air is completely predictable. It flies like a big, flat wing or high wing plane. I mean, it doesn't have a lot of horrible low wing tendencies we see. It holds itself well, going through banks, has good, of course, inverts are always a blast in a Corsair. Things fly more stable inverted than they do upright.
They do.
But as far as knife edge authority, it's plenty for the tail. It flies very well for a sporty warbird. It's not a 3D plane by any means, but if you want to do scale-like aerobatics all day long, and it's not going to freak you out, you're not going to have a bunch of panic moments at all. So it's a very, very good, well-behaved flyer.
Good. Flight time, 4.5 out of 5.
Again, engine choice. You've got 2-stroke options. You got 4-stroke options. Even though it's not spec, some of the guys, like I said, are running pump gas. We saw out there with I think they threw a DLE-20 in there, running pump gas. And all depends on your setup. How much you're into it and stuff, but you're going to get definitely within the class of aircraft.
Most fuel planes, their flight time's not an issue.
12, 10-minute flight. Set your timer at 10 minutes and enjoy it for the next 10. It just depends on your flying. If you're taking it easy on it, and you could stretch that out to, a 15-minute flight if you have the right setup. So.
All right. Well, then that leaves us to field size. Definitely a large flying field.
Yeah, this is
not a park flyer.
This is a sanctioned air park, sanctioned flying field, or private property with insurance or whatever.
Once it's up in the air, it doesn't require as much room. It's just the landings and takeoff. You don't want to be crunched.
Yeah,
in a tiny
you're still flying you're yanking a 10-pound plane for all intents and purposes. It's a 10-pound plane. that can reach some pretty decent speeds around and with a pretty powerful engine. So you want to be at a park, take it to your local flying park.
Portability, we gave it a 3.5 out of 5 for obvious reasons. This is not an easy plane to take apart, get the wing off. You don't want to go through all that.
2 bolts to take the wing off, but you've got tubes. If you do the retracts, even if you go electric retracts, you got all the wiring goes in there. There's a lot going between the fuse and the main wing, and it's just not real practical. I'll tell you, taking that wing off and on, you're going to trash the covering on the fuselage. It's just too sensitive. So it's a travel as assembled plane, which now all of a sudden, you got 62.5-inch wingspan. That's not going to fit in the family sedan very easily.
No.
So you're yanking around the back of a pickup truck or a minivan or something like that. So.
Sure. Trailer.
Skill
level.
Semi.
We said advanced on the skill level. I think for many of the aforementioned qualities of the plane, the flight characteristics, everything, this plane is going to require you to pay attention. You're going to want to be well beyond just getting familiar with the 4-channel and low wing experience.
Yeah,
and you want to have some.
Just because you've flown a foam Corsair does not mean you can fly this Corsair.
No,
the two behave entirely different.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You got more weight, which is great in the wind, but you've got more weight, which is a handful on landing and takeoff.
More weight, flaps, powerful engine. You've got some inherent characteristics with the Corsair airframe, and then ultimately you have a large warbird. Low wing. It's a different wing.
And warbirds in
treat
general,
it like a low wing warbird.
Warbirds in general have a lot of characteristics to them that require more skill.
Yeah.
Most of them want to tip stall easier. Their stall's nothing like your standard sport model.
Yep. Landings is your big thing when you bring them in, unless you want to have a pile of parts. And you can talk to any pilot, and we've talked to a lot of the pros that go out and fly their 3D Aerobats, and then they go back to flying with on the weekends. They'll fly their warbirds, and they're like, man, I had to stop and think for a minute. I can't fly this like a 3D Aerobat.
Nope.
It's not. Don't fly like an RC airplane. You got to fly it more like the real thing.
You got to treat it with respect. Is what you have to do.
Well, that wraps up our review of the top Flite F4U Corsair 60 size. If you want to see the full review, you can go to our website at 2bfly.com. For our mobile users, you can go to rcflightsource.com, download a mobile app, and take our content with you on the go. I'm Kurt with Two Brothers Hobby.
And I'm Rob. Thanks for watching.